All right, welcome, guys. I am here with Darren Korb, who is the composer for a series of games with Supergiant. The lineup is Bastion, Transistor, Pyre, and the latest one now is Hades that just came out a year ago. Darren, I just want to say I'm a big fan, so I'm really happy to have you here today, and welcome.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, pleasure to be here.
Yeah. So could you tell us a little bit about your musical background and how you got started with Supergiant Games?
Yeah, for sure. I grew up as a little kid. I started singing when I was a kid, about 5 years old. I started performing in musical theater and stuff, and I did that kind of through high school. And then
Okay.
when I was around 11, I picked up the guitar and started playing in bands and writing songs and doing that whole thing. And when I was in high school, I discovered multi-track recording. So that was when I kind of knew, oh, okay, I got to do this. Something involved, something related to this.
Right
Um,
on.
and so that's kind of how I got into music and I went to NYU for like I did an individualized major, which was sort of a combination of music production and music business.
Uh-huh.
And then I was just trying to uh, work in music in any way that I could. Basically, after I finished school, I was interning at a recording studio. I was taking gigs as a hired musician sometimes in bands. Every once in a while, um, I was producing local artists and stuff, and trying to write songs. And I wrote a musical with my brother, and I ended up doing like a spot for an infomercial. One time I got to make a couple of pieces for that, and that was really my only
Awesome.
composing experience before. I did a friend's short film, and
Uh-huh.
that was my only real composing experience before my good buddy Amir Rao, who I grew up with. He had been working at ELA and in 2009 he left and decided to start co-found Supergiant,
Yeah.
and he just kind of asked me to do all the audio because he thought I
Uh-huh.
could. We'd worked together creatively in the past. He was my drummer for a long time in bands together and stuff. Uh, and so yeah, I was like, yeah, of course I will do this. This sounds amazing. I'm totally in. I don't know
That's
how to
great.
do all of that, but I will do it. And so yeah, I never looked back.
It's kind of a beautiful thing when you kind of both journeyed away from each other, like clear across the continent from each other, and then came back. That's awesome. I see that on your website or the Supergiant Games website. There's a very tight knit group. It seems like, and we have like Logan Cunningham
Yeah,
as a voice actor, and a lot of names appear as I see in throughout these other games that like for instance I think is it Gavin,
yep.
the creative director and the writer. Um,
That's Greg. That's Greg. Yeah,
oh,
Gavin's are yeah.
excuse
He
me,
does
yeah.
our yeah.
So Greg works with the lyric. I mean, not the lyrics, but the just the writing in itself and the storyline. And it sounds like with your job, you're not just a composer. You are also the dialogue director and also the sound effects Foley guy. So it seems like quite a bit of work in terms of that, and also just being able to coordinate between different departments and different heads of people. Um, could you share a little bit about that and how what's like kind of the big challenges between each other?
Yeah, so I mean, I think I do kind of three jobs. I'm the audio director technically, which at a larger company would be a person who sort of delegates, chooses and works with the composer, works with a sound and audio team for the
Yeah.
sound design, works with a voiceover director, etc. But I sort of wear all those hats myself because we're a small team. So yeah, the I think part of the trick is figuring out how to juggle that stuff and divide my time in a smart way that uses it efficiently and
Hmm.
kind of go back and forth between those things as needed for whatever we're working on. So I think yeah, over time it has started to make more sense to me, I think, and
Yeah.
it's kind of nice, I think, to have different disciplines to retreat into. When I need a break from one, I can use the other one as a break. So if I'm working on music and I'm feeling stuck or feeling like uninspired at a particular moment, there's always some other kind of work to do that can kind of help me reset my brain. And
Sure.
I can go make some sound effects and come back fresh later.
Yeah.
So there's always something else to do, which is nice.
Right on. With the time and management, it must be you must be super organized and just have like a spreadsheet to kind of keep everything in line. Along with that, do you also like hire out people to help you with these different jobs?
Not really.
Really?
We've hired some people every once in a while on Transistor. I had a kid in the middle of production, so we
Hmm.
hired some people to help with some sound design on that project. And Pyre and Hades, uh, I hired a dialogue editor, this guy Brad Hagman, who's been working with us since, who
Okay.
is a real lifesaver in terms of, we had a lot of recorded lines for Hades, and I think it was like 22,000-ish lines. And
Yeah.
so, saving me all the time of having to clean up and edit the dialogue was really awesome. And so that made it, you know, I've started to realize things that I can delegate easily
Hmm.
it makes sense to delegate them, but not much
Sure.
else. I mean, that's mostly it so far. I've worked with a couple other people, like on the soundtrack for Hades. I have a couple of featured guitar players on one track
Oh
who
yeah.
I couldn't do that myself, so I found some awesome dudes who could.
Oh yeah.
Um, and the orchestral arrangements, I have Austin Wintory.
Hmm.
He helped me with those. So that's not really my forte. So I reached out to him, and of course Ashley Barrett I've worked with for quite a long time,
Oh yeah.
um, as a vocalist. So yeah, I
Yeah,
mean,
there's a lot of great collaborations that I've seen with Ashley Barrett in particular. Austin Wintory would be also a lot of fun to talk about. But let's talk about Ashley Barrett and your
yep,
collaboration with her.
yeah,
I've noticed that her name pops up in all four games and their soundtracks. And there's about a handful of songs per soundtrack. Is this something that actually, initially, before I even go into the collaboration with Ashley, I was just curious about the songwriting in itself.
yeah.
Was this something that you initiated to the directors and say like, "Hey, I actually want to have some songs. Can I do that?"
I think mostly it was because my background coming into this was as a songwriter. That was the thing that I felt like I knew how to do best.
Hmm.
And I really enjoyed when there were songs in games and used effective when those were used effectively. And I was really interested in doing something like that on Bastion, because I thought, well, I'm a songwriter, I'm working on a game, this makes sense. I feel like we have an opportunity. It'd be fun to try to do something with songs in the game in a way that I hadn't seen, or in a way that maybe felt unique to this project, or maybe I'll be able to bring something to the table that people haven't heard before
Yeah.
in a game in this way. So
Hmm.
that was sort of the hope for Bastion, and that was where I was coming from there. So it just makes sense to me to continue to include that stuff, just because it's I really enjoy doing it. I think it allows us to do things creatively that um, that are not super common necessarily in
Oh
games.
yeah.
So I
Hmm.
really like to be able to explore that stuff and see where we can take it and see what we can do with it on each project.
Oh yeah, it's definitely unique, and that approach, I think it makes the Supergiant Games have a way different, a very different feel than other games that you might play. But yeah, and on to that note, with Ashley Barrett, I think you guys just mesh so well together harmonically, and so yeah, what's your story about how you guys met?
Yeah, Ashley and I grew up in the Bay Area, but and did musical theater at the same musical theater place
Oh,
when we were
okay.
kids. And we didn't know each other then, but we have a bunch of mutual friends through that. And we met when we were both living in New York separately.
Huh.
I was working on a project and I needed a demo singer and people recommended Ashley to me. She came and knocked it out of the park, did a great job on that. And when I was working on Bastion and I was writing this song for Zia, and I was trying to think of people I knew who could pull this off, the kind of song I was writing. Ashley was the first person that came to my mind, and she killed it, and basically that's just kind of continued working together on each project just because she's great to work with, and she does an awesome job. She has a beautiful voice, and so yeah, it's been a very fruitful working relationship.
Oh yeah, that's awesome. And I watched your PAX East 2020 concert recently, and I was very impressed just by the production. But yeah, you had Ashley right there on concert stage with you, with Austin and Wintory on the side. That must have been really fun. Speaking of which. Yeah, speaking of which, well, your work with Austin Wintory on Hades in particular, I noticed that you went down to Abbey Road to do some recordings as well. And how was that?
Just the coolest thing I've ever done. That's all. It was amazing. It was January 2020, so kind of right under the wire for pandemic stuff. Thankfully, we managed to get in there before everything went crazy. And so what happened was we had done the 10-year anniversary concert with the orchestral arrangements, which Austin sort of helped me put together, and he conducted that, and he helped me find an arranger, and he helped me communicate with the arranger, and we just got, he sort of was there through the whole process and helped shepherd that along. And that was taking existing Supergiant songs from all the games and sort of converting them into a new type of experience, new arrangements for a chamber orchestra with this sort of ensemble that we put together for this purpose, for a concert, right? And the concert was so much fun, and people seemed to enjoy it so much that we decided to make an album out of it. And Austin is somebody who has done this a lot and knows how to record orchestras and record in studios, and has relationships with a bunch of studios, and understands how to book the musicians, and where this is the strength of this city's musicians and these city, that understands how to do that. So he sent me it's like, well, here's a few studios. We could go to Seattle, that would be cool, or we could go to Nashville, that'd be great, and here's Abbey Road just for fun, just in case, and the combination of it being like a real dream of mine and bucket list thing, and just some opportunities we saw around it, we ended up like, what, let's do it. And so partially to justify that album recording, I wrote a couple of tracks for Hades that I intended to record with that same ensemble.
Okay.
And so was part of it. That's how that ended up coming to pass, is maybe I wouldn't have thought to record a chamber orchestra for a couple of Hades tracks without having had this other experience. And so I wrote these tracks, and I had Austin arrange the orchestral parts for those tracks. He did a beautiful job. I'm so happy with how that stuff turned out, and it was so much fun, because it's one thing, Ashley and I were there in the studio recording our vocal parts sort of live in isolation rooms with the orchestra. It was so much fun.
Oh, I bet.
We recorded the 12 tracks in 2 days, the full 10 tracks of the album plus the 2 tracks for Hades.
Wow. Okay.
It was a whirlwind, such an incredible blast, and we played a concert while we were in London and stuff too, like
I see.
Acoustic show. And
with the same players?
No, it was just Ashley and me. It was just a little acoustic.
Acoustic. Okay, I see.
Cool. And yeah, it was just such an incredible trip. That was really a once in a lifetime kind of amazing experience. And I'm such a Beatles fanatic that incredible to record in the actual room that the Beatles made all but one of their albums in, that same exact room. So it was pretty, just had a lot of, you like look at the stairwell, you're like, that's where they took the picture on the stairs, and that's where this is the front where they're all doing that picture with their legs up, and and so just as someone who the Beatles are really meaningful to me, as an influence, musical influence. So
same here. Yeah, same.
Yes.
I'm a drummer myself, so
Yeah.
I just think of in the Abbey Road, the end, the
Oh
drum
yeah.
solo thing, and just
Incredible.
him being in that room, just doing just shredding the drums there.
It's the
Yeah,
best.
that's so cool. Would you want to go back and do more albums at Abbey Road? Yeah.
Sure. Who wouldn't?
Yeah, if the budget is justified, right?
Yeah, I mean, listen, yeah. I mean, oh no, I have to go back to Abbey Road and record an album. Yeah, I would be happy to do
Yes.
that anytime.
Yeah.
Anytime the opportunity presented itself, I would love to go back.
Oh yeah, that's great. And yeah, hopefully, with the world and COVID, and hopefully we can get back to some normalcy there.
That
Well,
would be
okay,
nice. Yeah.
that is so fun. I mean, and that is a big kind of a big evolution or departure from what I've read about, because I actually the my first encounter with your music, Darren, is when I read this book. I was doing some research on composing for video games, and there's a book that Chance Thomas wrote called
Yeah.
same title, Composing for Video Games.
Yeah.
And one of the chapters is on like budget and being creative, like working outside the box. He actually mentions you.
Cool.
And on the Bastion album in particular, he said that you were recording like out of your apartment inside of a closet. Could you talk more about that?
I mean, that's how I recorded everything for every game except the stuff I did at Abbey Road, basically.
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
I when I moved to the first two games I worked on remotely. I was in New York. The studio was in San Francisco, and then I moved back to the Bay Area and started working out of the office and record. We got a vocal booth essentially for the office.
Okay.
So the first two games were closets. And then the second two games were vocal booths. Similar,
Sure.
same size, not much fancier.
Yeah.
But slightly fancier, I guess. So technically, it wasn't all the same. But yeah,
Yeah.
I for me when I started, part of the constraint that I wanted to stick to was it has to be stuff that I can do myself. I don't have a budget. We can't hire. I don't know. I don't really have the skill set to even prepare music for other people to play. Like I don't write music well or anything like that. I have a rock background and I just kind of play. That's kind of, I just record the thing and that's me writing it. I don't write anything out.
Okay.
So
well, I mean, I beg to differ as far as being able to write music, because
yes, but I just mean I don't notate.
the notation. Okay.
Yeah. I don't write it down for other people to perform. I've never really done that. I
see.
have always just performed it into the recording software myself.
Gotcha.
So yeah, that was part of the constraint for me, was it has to be something that I can do myself and that I can do and have it sound good in my apartment and not sound unintentionally lo-fi. Like anything that sounds lo-fi, I want it to sound like a choice. And I want it to sound like it's lo-fi on purpose as a stylistic choice and not a problem with how it was recorded or something. So
Sure.
on Bastion, for example, I knew that I was not going to have like real sounding drums. I wasn't going to be able to record drums in my little Brooklyn apartment or in a way that sounded good. I needed a studio for that, and I just didn't have access to that kind of thing. On the budget, the sort of, on the shoestring budget that we were working on. So I just made do. I took into account the sort of vibe of the game we were making, which had this frontiersy vibe.
Yeah.
And one of the early sort of tonal touchstones we had was this sentence, what if Cormac McCarthy made a fantasy video game, was sort of the thing we were thinking about tonally, right?
Okay.
And so this sort of frontiersy fantasy game. And in order to try to create that vibe, I leaned into the frontier thing I had. I knew I wanted to have acoustic guitar, sort of bluesy, Western, kind of vibe. And then I also knew I wanted to have some sort of aspects that express this sort of frontier element of it, some like an unknown land, like an untamed land, And to represent that stuff, I chose a lot of like world music sounds that would be less familiar to at least a Western listener, or sounds that maybe even if they're not less familiar, don't traditionally go with the bluesy acoustic guitar sound.
Gotcha.
And then to sort of meld that all together and give it kind of a unique vibe and put you in a new place, I had the sort of trip hop beats and sampled beats and that kind of component of the sound, right?
Yeah.
And all of those decisions were both for creative reasons and for practical reasons.
Yeah.
Because I could execute all that stuff. I had access to good trip hop samples in Logic that just came with a bunch of that stuff, and it sounded great. And I was like, yeah, this is cool. I can work with this. And
Cool.
And I had access to great samples of world instruments also from Logic, and I was like, cool, I can do that. And I had guitars, and I had a bass, and I had some electric guitars. I knew I could record all that stuff direct and use the fake amps in Logic, and I could make it all work and do that convincingly. So
very nice.
It was both for sort of creative and practical reasons that I ended up working that way.
Yeah, that makes sense. And you said along with that's kind of is something that you said you carried over to the next two, also out of practicality and like maybe budget constraints and things like that as well.
Yeah, I think partially, we were less constrained from a budget standpoint on the following projects, but I certainly was interested to just pursue other things creatively, and I was fascinated by what else I could kind of pull off. Like, part of the thing with Bastion was, it's like a band that makes an album. You like use all of your ideas that you've collected over the course of your life leading up to that point for your first thing.
Yeah.
And then you have to you have a year or 2 years or whatever it is for your next thing. You have to generate all new stuff. So I wanted to try and see if I could make a soundtrack for another game that was a different setting, had a different vibe, but had some aspect of the texture of the game itself that could remind you that it was made by the same individuals that made this other game. And I sort of started thinking about Supergiant as a band almost, because we had, it was like 7 people on Bastion, who were on team. So there are bands that have more people than that, any ska band or
like Leonard
like
Skinner,
Earth, Wind and Fire, P-Funk, so anyway, that was something that was interesting to me, was trying to, with the same me and the same tools at my disposal, trying to make a vastly different thing. Was an interesting challenge for me, and trying to sort of push in a new direction was a lot of fun for that game. And so I felt like there was a lot more area to explore with it, without swapping, adding in additional components to the process, if that makes sense. I was interested in that. And and then for Pyre, it was more for me about trying to express something really specific for that project, even though it ended up having kind of a broad range of styles. Ultimately, like for each project, I have kind of a creative touchstone. For Bastion, I came up with this term, acoustic frontier trip hop, which is like a style I had created for that game to try and unify the music, because I didn't have other tools, I felt, to unify the music, right? I didn't have a background in composing, and I didn't really have a mastery of motifs and character themes and stuff like that. I didn't know how to do that stuff. So I thought, well, you know what? I'll try and make a genre and then make an album in that genre. It was the idea, I kind of know how to do. And so for Transistor, the conceit for me that was really valuable was, this is Red's music. The whole album, the whole soundtrack is Red's music that this character has written. And so the idea was, I tried to develop a sort of creative vocabulary for Red and try to embody that as much as I could for the soundtrack.
Gotcha.
And I did develop a term ultimately for what that music was, but I ended up calling it like old world electronic post rock or something, but
Yeah.
it didn't guide the process as much as it did for Bastion. And then
Gotcha.
for Pyre, I think I ended up calling it like,
Was it bardic acoustic rock?
it was like a cult fantasy. I don't remember
Oh,
something,
okay.
but it, but my creative touchstone for that one was, what if I made a whole style of music from the intro to Stairway to Heaven, like
Oh,
just the
okay.
like flute, like, you know, the like acoustic guitar flute thing. Like, what if that I extrapolated that out into like a genre of music and made that like
Yeah.
this, like a 70s, I wanted to go like a real 70s fantasy rock vibe
Gotcha.
um was my aim for that one. And then for
Gotcha.
Hades,
Yeah.
you know, it there was a lot of fun stuff to play with that was really I felt really strong creatively, like really rich things to plumb, like, you know, set in the underworld of ancient Greece. So there's like this whole Mediterranean vibe that was just kind of sitting there that I was like, well, it's got to have some of that. And it's in hell, so it's got to have rock and roll, you know, it's got to have
Yeah.
metal.
Uh-huh.
And then but then there was this other aspect to the game's tone that I really wanted to express, which was sort of the lightness of the tone of the game, the quirk, which
Yeah.
wasn't really expressed in those other two elements. Like, it's a game that's ostensibly a bleak game, but the experience of it is not bleak.
Hmm.
And so I wanted something to reflect that. So I had this sort of spooky, I call it like a Halloween music vibe, which is this kind of theremin-like sound that's
Okay.
sort of present throughout the soundtrack. So
Oh, I
I ended
see.
up calling that what did I call it? I call it Mediterranean prog rock Halloween music. Is what I ended up calling the Hades
That's
soundtrack.
great. Yeah. So coming up with these concepts seem like maybe half the battle, right? Because
Yeah.
you're always just trying to find that unique sound to it, which, yeah, I really enjoy how each album do differ in feel, especially Hades with, when you hired those guitar players. I looked up one of the guitar players. I forget his name, but he played on like Street Fighter, or he's like the composer for Street Fighter,
Yeah,
like five.
yeah. So
Yeah.
there's Masahiro Aoki and Daisuke Kurosawa are
Yes.
both amazing. I know they both worked on some other stuff. And what, yeah, I forget which one of those fellas worked on Street. Yeah, I think Street Fighter or something. I forget. Yeah,
Hmm.
but those guys are incredible. They're so good. I Working with them was so much fun because
Yeah.
basically I had this idea. So what happened was, we had God of the Dead, which is the song, the track that plays when you fight the boss of the game, and there's phase one, which is this sort of mellow, not mellow, it's like very heavy, but it's slow and kind of sludgy,
Hmm.
extremely heavy. And then there's like a second phase to the fight, and when that kicks in, like the music amps up to 10.
Oh
It's like,
yeah.
let's
Hmm.
go as fast as we can, kick some butt.
Yeah.
And I didn't know there was going to be a third thing necessarily at first. So when the idea for that came about, I was like, man, I already turned it up to 10.
Yeah.
What am I going to do here?
Take it at 11,
And
right?
I guess, yeah,
Final step.
so I got to go to 11, I guess. And so the way that I thought it would be fun to go to 11 is like, well, I mean, there should probably be like a guitar duel, like a crazy, shreddy, insane guitar duel over the top of this.
Yeah.
Um, and I basically, I asked my friend who works with a lot of musicians for game music stuff if he had any recommendations for awesome guitar players for this, and he's like, oh
Okay.
yeah, I know, yep, I got the dudes here. He connected us. I emailed them. I was like, I was thinking about putting like a crazy 4-minute Megadeth style, like Tornado of Souls, basically
Uh-huh.
inspired guitar solo over this entire track. Can you guys? They're like, okay, give us a few days. They came back. He sent me the tracks, and they were just like, yep, this is perfect. I have 0 notes. It's amazing. Like,
Yeah. That's amazing.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah. So
Wow.
those guys are incredible.
Yeah. Well, that sounds like a lot of fun. As far as going through your phases of where you have your game, which is the big thing, and then you also have concerts and things like that. What do you like to do like when you're not working, like on your off time, when like in between a big game project?
Yeah, I mean, there's always work to be done, on something. But
Mhm.
yeah, I have a fun side project band that's like a garage rock band with some friends of mine that I've
Cool.
had for a while. We all live in different states now, so it's not as easy to make music together. But we've made a few records, and we're working on one right now that we did the tracks for, in like 2014 or something. We've been sitting on
Okay,
them for years. So
great.
so got a few more tracks left for that record. It's almost done.
Yeah.
So I'm working on that slowly but surely over time. Every several months there'll be like a small burst of activity, and and
Okay.
then playing games, watching movies,
Uh-huh.
that kind of thing, hanging out with my family, just
Great.
trying to stay sane and keep it all,
Yeah.
you know, stuff to help me recharge so that I can come back and do the work and
Exactly.
keep it all fun,
Yeah, yeah. And now that when you're playing games, it's probably different. You can't really just play it like you normally would, right? You kind of have to put on like a half cap of like, oh, I'm doing some research, and then the other half is just I'm enjoying it. But I feel the same way. I'm more of a film composer myself, so like I watch films differently now.
Yeah. Yeah,
Hmm.
for sure. I try not to do that, but sometimes I think the main thing is that I want to play a lot of stuff. And so my patience for trying a thing out, like I gotta like it a lot,
Hmm.
like pretty quick to want to
Yeah.
stick with it. I'll try a game out, I'll play for like an hour, and if I'm not like really feeling, I'll be like, okay, well I played that for a little bit. I saw what it was about, sorta.
Yeah.
And but I mean, sure enough, I'm still playing like Diablo 2 real late every night. Like I used like I'm in high school again. So
Yeah, yeah. Good old
so I
Diablo
mean,
2. Nice. There you go.
I
Yeah.
try
Hey,
every once in a while. I try to just, that game has incredible audio. I love the audio for that game. It's so good, and the remaster is really cool. It's like so interesting how they approached it.
Oh,
It's
okay.
very, it's pretty dope. I there's like a toggle key that you can press that
Uh-huh.
just turns on the old graphics and audio mix. Like it
Oh,
just swaps it,
interesting.
and then you
Yeah.
press it and just preg goes right back. And they have an entirely separate mix. Like they redid the mix, and some of the sound effects are different, but they kept a lot of it the same, but they just kind of tweaked the ambiances and the way some of the stuff is implemented. It's really interesting.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I've been appreciating just the sort of technical insanity of what they did.
Yeah. Yeah. So some games just stand the test of time,
Yeah.
just like that, or like with any medium in that case, right? But that's great to hear that you're a big Diablo 2 fan, which ties into Hades in a sense.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. That's great. Well, with that being said, I thought it'd be fun to also just talk about um, your experience with Rock Band, because
Mhm.
I heard a little bit about that, and I was like, well, that's really cool. So from one standpoint, I think that almost sounds like it was a training ground for you, because you played a lot of Rock Band, and you learned a lot of songs, not just with like guitar but drums and probably other things. So did you also sing in the rock bands and kind
Oh
of
yeah,
work on your vocal chops that way?
oh yeah. I mean, I play all the rock band instruments. I'd say my specialty is the drums. The vocals, like as growing up as a singer, like I feel the vocals are not as stimulating for me as the drums, which feel like it's like more of a test. It's like if I hear the song and know the melody, I feel like I can ace the vocals. It's like not
Yeah.
as hard. Doesn't
Hmm.
feel as hard as the drums do. But yeah, sure enough, I've been playing. I still regularly play Rock Band, and love in particular playing the pro drums for that,
Yeah.
because it's just like jamming on the drums for real. Basically, it's almost all
Yeah.
1-to-1 on expert mode. So um,
Yeah.
it's just great, and it gives, like, I think Rock Band is so cool because it really gave me a sense of, as a producer, it allowed me to hear the parts in isolation better and understand, especially the bass and the drums.
Uh-huh.
It really allowed me to understand how bass players like write parts, what's happening rhythmically. Sometimes that stuff gets a little lost when you're listening to it. It's just there, it's like texturally present, but you're not necessarily noticing every bass fill and every like
Sure.
break in the eighth notes and like how whatever's happening with the rhythm of the bass and stuff.
Uh-huh.
So
yeah.
It was really informative for me there when I started playing a bunch of Rock Band to think about that stuff. And it certainly made me a better drummer and made my timing a lot better as a guitar player and a bass player and stuff. And just like, you really gotta tighten it up, you know, in order to
for sure. Uh-huh.
And so that's been really cool. And it's certainly improved my skills as a drummer for sure. And so my history was, you know, with Rock Band, I did for a minute when the Rock Band network was a thing. I was charting songs for the Rock Band network. I had like a little, my friend had a little company that did this, and I was like working with him.
Oh, okay, I see.
And like a band could like pay us to put their song on the Rock Band network was the idea. You know, it wasn't a very sustainable business model, but it was fun. It was fun while we did it. And so I authored a good chunk of Rock Band tunes for the Rock Band network.
I see. Okay, I didn't know that.
And also in 2010, I was in the winning band for the Total Rewards Rock Band National Championship, North America.
Yeah.
So I did win the National Rock Band Championship in 2010, and technically I am the reigning champion because they haven't had another one since.
There you go.
So I mean, feel pretty good about that.
Yeah, and it while you're on top, right?
Exactly.
So and the national champion, was that like being able to play all the instruments and like kind of?
So it was like a battle of the bands. I had bandmates.
Oh, okay.
And so it's like it's a 4-person band, and they judge it based on like a combination of score, performance, you know, choreography, costume, whatever, you know, and all that stuff. Cool. So yeah, it was great. Did crazy costumes. It was like the finals were in Atlantic City, like at the casino, like at a big thing. It was a lot of fun.
That's great.
And it was a blast. We got like a big novelty check at the end. One of the prizes was we got to meet Ringo Starr, which was pretty sweet.
Ooh, wow! Hey, it's coming full circle. Talking about the Beatles.
Yeah.
Wow,
it was awesome. Yeah, so much fun.
Yeah, well, that's great. Well, there you have it, guys. If you want to get better, you know, there's some tips of the trade. Just play some Rock Band or Guitar Hero.
Rock Band. That's all you got.
I mean, I think Rock Band is much more superior that way. But yeah, hey, thank you for your time again. Doing this interview means a lot. And so, Darren Korb of Hades, Bastion, Pyre, Transistor. I'll put the link with all your albums in the description below so that anyone can see that. But with that being said, thank you again, and I hope you have a great rest of your career. Looking forward to your next project.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you for having me.